Please join me in welcoming Jody Hawkins.
Good evening. Look at all these smiling faces out here. Just put this down here. Nope, that's good. Hello. All right. So back in 2008, if someone had told me that going back to college would completely change the direction of my life, leading me to learn about asteroid mining, interviewing the father of the Boeing 747 in his living room, and somehow meeting a surprising number of astronauts along the way, I would have said they were absolutely out of their minds. But that's exactly what happened after I decided to go back to school. Tonight, I get to tell you a little bit about that journey. Good evening, Cougs. It's wonderful to be here with so many friends and alumni and students and community partners. And I have to say, mini golf was the perfect choice for tonight, because if you've ever played around mini golf, you've experienced something very similar to the college journey. You line up the shot, you think you know where the ball is going, and then suddenly there's a windmill or a tunnel or some other obstacle in your way that you did not see coming. Which, if I'm being honest, is also a pretty accurate description of my path to college. Because unlike many students who go straight to college after high school, my journey looked a little bit different. I'd spent years working in and around the title and escrow industry and raising 6 wonderful children. And as many parents know, when you make a big decision like going back to school, it doesn't just affect you, it affects the whole family. So when I walked onto campus that first day, I wasn't just starting college, I was stepping into an entirely new chapter of my life. My journey back to school began in 2008 during the financial crisis. I was working as an escrow notary, and the calls had slowed to a trickle. And at the same time, my youngest child was in middle school. And it finally felt like the right moment to do something that I had always wanted to do, which was go back to school. I enrolled at Everett Community College, and that decision changed the course of my life forever. Now, if you've never been a returning adult student, let me explain a little bit about those first days and what they feel like. Actually, are there any adult students that went back to school? And yeah? Awesome. I knew there would be a couple of you here. So you know exactly what I'm talking about. You walk into class and pretty quickly notice a couple of things. First, everyone looked about 12. I think I was 41 at the time when I walked into that room for the first time. And second, apparently swearing in class was perfectly acceptable these days. That was such a shock. My English 101 instructor used a certain four-letter word a lot, like all the time, and I was just in shock. I was, as a mom who spent so many years telling my kids not to swear, and then walking into that environment, it was pretty crazy. But somewhere in the middle of all that craziness, something wonderful happened, and that was that I discovered journalism. And I discovered a whole new community. Eventually, I became co-editor-in-chief of the college newspaper, The Clipper. And suddenly, I wasn't just a student going back to school. I was a storyteller surrounded by people that I cared about. The Clipper offices were located in White Horse Hall. And just outside our door, high above the atrium, were Paul Wexler's incredible helix sculptures. And if that name sounds familiar, it might be because some of his work is right here in this building. Not far from us in this room are his massive conic sections, those beautiful wooden and steel sculptures hanging over the ceiling, the stairway outside. Beautiful. Back at Everett Community College, watching that helix sculpture spin, it became part of my nightly routine. There were these long wooden benches outside of my office, and underneath it, late at night, I would just sit there or sometimes lay there and stare up at those sculptures spinning. I spent many evenings working through story ideas and deadlines. Looking back, that's where something really clicked for me. For the first time, I understood how powerful storytelling could be and how much I loved doing it. After earning my associate's degree, life took another turn, as it often does. I stepped away from school for a time to help care for my father-in-law during the last years of his life. And that experience reminded me of something many adult students understand very well. Life doesn't just stop because you're trying to earn your degree. Once I was ready to return to school, which is exactly why this university matters so much. Once I was ready to return to school, I learned that WSU had taken over the University Center at Everett Community College and added a new program, Integrated Strategic Communications. I was thrilled to have a chance to finish my degree in a place that I knew so well. And the faculty and staff were wonderful. One name that might be familiar to many of you here tonight is Haley Larson. We joined this new program together and graduated at the same time. So it was pretty great to see her here tonight. I'll never forget my instructors, Brett Atwood and Corey Wilder, who encouraged me every step of the way, and in fact still do. And then there was Dr. Richardson, who had a remarkable way of making me question everything I thought I knew about life, and also lovingly kicking my butt. He worked us really hard. And I will always be grateful for that, even in spite of all the tears. One of the reasons my college experience meant so much was the people I went through it with. Our cohort was small, which meant we got to know each other really well. We learned together, we celebrated together, and we supported each other through the maze of projects, presentations, and deadlines, and internships. That's when things really started getting interesting. Internships opened up worlds I had never expected. My first internship was with Planetary Power, a company in Redmond developing solar and hybrid energy systems designed to bring sustainable energy anywhere on the planet. It was really cool. It's called Hygen. Their sister company, Planetary Resources, had an even bigger mission. They were developing technology needed to mine asteroids in space. Yes, asteroid mining. It's crazy. During that internship, I had the chance to learn from some incredible dreamers, people who were thinking not just about the next product or company, but about the future of humanity in space. And there I was, a returning college student, who not long before had been managing carpools and school lunches, suddenly learning about companies planning humanity's next steps beyond Earth. It changed the way I thought about what was possible. The second thing I never imagined doing was sitting in the living room of the man who designed the Boeing 747, Joseph Sutter, often called the father of the 747. During my internship at the Future of Flight Aviation Center, I helped to create a video interview with Mr. Sutter on for their 10th anniversary gala. We visited him at his home in West Seattle, where he shared stories about designing one of the most iconic airplanes in aviation history. His walls were covered with awards, photographs, letters from people like Bill Boeing and Barack and Michelle Obama. Before we left, he even signed copies of his book for us, and it's something that has become one of my most treasured keepsakes. It was one of those moments where you stop and think, how in the world did I get here? The third thing I never imagined doing was yelling across an airport at an astronaut. I had actually met astronaut Mike Massimino during my internship at Future of Flight. You might recognize him from his guest appearances on The Big Bang Theory. He jokes about made him almost as famous as being an astronaut. He was one of the featured speakers of the 10th anniversary gala, invited by his friend and fellow astronaut Nicholas Patrick, who served on the Future of Flight board, along with our very own Chancellor Peach. I even have this selfie with the two of them from that evening, which brings back so many memories. About a year and a half after meeting Mike for the first time, I found myself flying to Florida to take part in the NASA social program covering the launch of the NOAA GOES-S weather satellite. I was on the second leg of a flight from Hawaii, a red-eye, so I had been flying through the night and listening to Mike's audiobook, Spaceman. Really good book. So by the time I landed, his voice had basically been in my head for hours, like all night long. I was running on almost no sleep. I stepped off the plane, turned toward the concourse, and unbelievably, there he was. Standing in line at one of those restaurants that opens up right out into the middle of the terminal. And in that moment, after a full night of flying and listening to his voice, my brain apparently decided that we were friends. So so before my brain had time to catch up with my mouth, I yelled across the room, "Mike!" Really, in the airport. He looked up at me and he waved, which was super sweet, but the look on his face clearly said, "Do I know this person?" And the crazy thing is, I could hear his voice say that in my head, because that's how much I knew it by then. But later, standing on the beach across from Kennedy Space Center, watching this rocket rise into the sky, the embarrassment had finally faded. I remembered thinking about everything that had led me to that point. And I had one overwhelming thought. None of this would have happened if I hadn't gone back to school. In one of those full circle moments, in my mind, I was transported back to graduation night. It was May 2016, and the first WSU ever graduation was held at the Future of Flight, where I had done my internship, a place I had truly come to love. I remember being surrounded by my classmates and friends and seeing Haley and Chancellor Petrie, Christina Marie, and even Butch the Cougar up on that stage. And through the giant windows behind them, we could see the WSU airplane outside. It was beautiful. It was stunning and exhilarating, and everyone was smiling. What made that moment even more special for me was that I knew I was going to be spending a lot more time in that building because I had accepted a full-time job at the Future of Flight upon graduation. I started just a few days later. And that's the power of opportunity. Because the students at WSU Everett today look a lot like the student I once was. They're working jobs, they're raising families, they're caring for parents, and sometimes despite doing everything right, life throws an obstacle in their course. A medical bill, a car repair, childcare that suddenly falls through. And in that moment, a relatively small amount of support can make the difference between a student dropping out or staying and finishing their degree. That's exactly what the Student Support Fund does. It helps students navigate those obstacles and stay on course. Because when one of these students graduates, it doesn't just change their life, it changes their family and their workplace and their community. And sometimes it launches them into opportunities they never imagined possible. Tonight, your generosity helps make that possible. So as you enjoy golf and food and maybe one more drink, I hope you'll think about the students walking a path that might look a lot like mine once did. They just need a little support to keep going. Because when you support a student, you don't just change one life, you change the future of an entire family. And I know because it happened to mine. Thank you for helping our students stay on course.